to the City of Gardner Planning Commission meeting for April 28th, 2020. I'll now call the meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us remotely for this meeting. It's the first one, so bear with us. It could be interesting through some of it. Some rules for the meeting I'd like to go over. Asking everyone mute your mic and video, not the commissioners though, unless you're talking. Raise your hand to be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. For any of the public wishing to speak, state your name and address prior to providing comments. We have 2 items on the agenda that have been withdrawn. Regular agenda item number 1, Prairie Brick Duplexes is withdrawn. And regular agenda item number 6A and 6B, Project Bergmont, has also been withdrawn. So I'll state that at the beginning of the meeting. And now we'll move on to a roll call. I'll call each commissioner if you can just say you're here. Commissioner Deaton.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ford.
Here.
Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner McNear.
Here.
Commissioner Mader.
Here.
Commissioner Simmons-Lee.
Here.
And I'm obviously here. So we have a full quorum, 7. I also like to state that we have city staff present. We have Larry Powell, the director, Kelly Drake Woodward, chief planner, Michelle Linger, principal planner, Robert Case, planner, Christy Hatley, planning technician, and Ryan Dink, the city attorney. Our first item tonight is consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. We have 1 item on the consent agenda. The standing approval of the minutes is written for the meeting on March 24th, 2020. Do any commissioners have anything or want to remove or change anything for that item? All right, seeing no raised hands, I'll take a motion or accept a motion to accept the minutes as written for the meeting on March 24th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
And make sure you say your name before you do it too.
Commissioner McNear, so moved.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Ford, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McNear and a second by Commissioner Ford. All those in any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0 on the consent item. All right, first regular agenda items number 2, Prairie Trace Meadows, would be 2A FDP-20-02. I don't know who's presenting.
That's me. Hold tight. Okay, I'm Michelle Leininger, principal planner for the city of Gardner. Item before you tonight is Prairie Trace Meadows preliminary and final development plan and final plat. What I will do is present the final development plan first, and then I will stop and the commission can do their discussion and take action on the final development plan, and then we'll continue on with the final plat. Okay, this is just to reference you where we're looking. You saw the preliminary plat, preliminary development plan, and 3 proposed rezonings for these properties last month. The small portion we're looking at this time is a portion of the single family development that's on the mainly just the southern and southeastern portions of this property. Currently, they're zoned a county RUR, which is a rural district, a county planned residential neighborhood retail business district, and a county planned light industrial park district. The proposal is to go to the RP 1 district for the estates area and the RP2 district for the Meadows area. And the Meadows area is what we're looking at right here. Here specifically is the preliminary development plan, and outlined in red is the Meadows area phase 1, and that is what we're looking at tonight. These are just the lots. There's more attached to it, as you can see here. This phase, first phase of the Meadows, also includes a portion that you see from 175th Street to the north. It's the collector road that swoops down from 175th Street down to the west. That'll be New Trails Parkway. And then the small section that goes from New Trails Parkway to the east towards the phase 1, that will be 177th Street. That is a collector, and that in the future will connect out to Clare Road. The street that you see going through this phase is Houston Street. Here's a close-up. This is for 27 lots. These are the smaller single-family lots. About a little over 5,000 square feet is the minimum. So these are the 50-foot wide smaller lots. There are 27 of them. There's also a small tract area for a subdivision sign up close to the collector road. But this is the landscaping plan. Really, this shows the layout of the proposed structures generally, and the street trees. Here's some proposed elevations that you saw in your plans and staff report. They're proposing to use stucco and stone veneer. They have some additional details with window details, column details. You can see some curvature to some of the doorways and windows. Some nice looking structures. Staff findings with the final development plan is generally compliance with the preliminary development plan. The project is consistent with the various policies of the comprehensive plan. That was something we talked in detail last month about. The proposed arrangement of the building and open space is consistent with good planning and engineering practices and principles. The architecture and building design uses quality materials and style appropriate for the context, and you saw that on the last slide with the elevations. This project is within 1 mile of New Century Air Center, which does require county review. There were 3 deviation requests for this final development plan. The first one is a deviation request from the other open areas generally requirement that requires 1 tree per 10,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing none for that. The second one is the other open areas generally requirement for shrubs. It's 1 shrub per 5,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing none. The third standard is for the neighborhood yard design and performance standards. This is for 1 small tree for every 50 foot of frontage, or 1 medium or large tree for every 100 foot of frontage. And this is a standard that is in addition to the street trees, and they are proposing none. As you read in the staff report, the applicant has stated that they are anticipating to create a HOA that will govern these lots, both the Meadows development and the Estates development. And in that HOA requirement, they will be required to spend a certain amount of money on landscaping. And because these lots are smaller, it was stated that they need, and because they have front-loaded driveways, that they needed more flexibility from these three requirements. The standards in the code really are a minimum. So on most of these lots, the additional landscaping, this is specifically on the lot, not including the street tree. The street tree is to be in the road right of way. So this is solely on the lot. Generally, they would be required to have one tree to meet the other open areas generally requirement, which that does not give a specification as to location. So that could be anywhere on the lot. The other open areas generally location would require about 2 shrubs for this phase of the development. There's one lot that's a little bit bigger that would require a few more shrubs. Generally, it would be 2 shrubs anywhere on the lot. You can put them in the backyard, etc. And then 1 small tree in the front yard. And that is required to be in the front yard, which is in front of the front plane of the house. So you could put that wherever you'd like. If you want to put it on the driveway side of the house in the front, if you want to put it as part of your landscaping, since it could be a small tree, that the location of that is a little more specific, being that it has to be in the front, but it doesn't give you a specified location. And so these are a minimum of what we want to see in on a lot for a single family house. And we, as a city, we have no control over HOAs. They are private legal documents. We typically don't see them until later after they're recorded. And we have no authority to enforce them. By removing these minimum standards, there is the potential for, if something happens, the HOA isn't created or the requirement is not included into the HOA document, then there is no base requirement for landscaping on the site. So in the most extreme situation, the HOA is not created. Then if the deviation requests are granted, then we could get a lot that has no landscaping on it. That's extreme, typically doesn't happen, but that's the situation we're trying to prevent, because landscaping has so many benefits and provides aesthetics to the community. And that's something we're really trying to support with these standards. So staff has recommended that the applicant meet these standards as a baseline for the landscaping requirements. And then, if they do bigger and better, that's fantastic, but we need some sort of baseline. So those are included in the conditions that I'll go over here shortly. Staff does recommend approval of the final development plan with the conditions outlined, and I'll go through those. Here's the suggested motion. There's a few pages of them. This is straight from your staff report. The conditions recommended by staff are to remove proposed lot entrances into adjacent properties off of New Trails Parkway. This is not part of, if you look on the plans, New Trails Parkway shows some commercial entrances to the properties to the north. Traffic studies have not been reviewed for those and such, so we want to make sure those are removed as to not offer some false sense of security of the exact location for those driveways. Revise the landscaping plan and the data summary to remove details regarding Tract A. Revise the landscape plan selection for building standards. Update the allocation of landscape required to reflect what was approved on the preliminary development plan. Just want to make sure that we're keeping things consistent from what they were granted. Revise the landscaping plan, update the information regarding 177th Street to be a collector standard street and tree spacing to be 40 to 60 feet on center. Some incorrect information there. Number 5, revise the landscape plan to remove the note regarding trees in the site triangle. There's a note on there that states about the city being responsible for any issues that might cause. That's not necessary. Revise the landscaping plan to show the street trees out of the site triangle, or if they are proposed within the site triangle, they shall be located no closer than 30 feet to the intersecting right-of-way, and that they do not have any foliage, limbs, or other obstructions between the 2 and 8 feet. This is a way that we can allow for those street trees to be a little closer to the intersection, but they just need to have a clear space between the 2 and 8 feet so you can see around it. Number 7, revise the summary on the landscape plan to require to meet the other open areas generally standard of 1 tree per 10,000 square feet of lot area. That's one of the deviation requests, as is 8 and 9. Those are just to meet those landscaping standards. Number 10, add a note stating that each lot shall meet the applicable code landscaping standard to be reviewed at the building permit stage. This is paired with that request to revise the landscape plan, just to be clear, so that if the deviations are not granted, that each lot shall meet the standards of the landscape plan. Number 11, application Z 20-01, PDP 20-02, and that should say PDP 2001. Preliminary plat 20-01 shall be approved and published, and all conditions met prior to the release of the building permits for this application. That's the items that went to the Planning Commission last month. They were approved by the governing body last week, and so they go to the airport board in May, the end of May. And then the Board of County Commissioners after that. Correct the alignment of Houston Street to the south as it shows offset from 178th Street. This is just a misalignment on the plans. Provide a written agreement to the Southern Star has reviewed the plans and agrees to the proposed street crossing and 10-foot concrete trail and associated easement to be located within their 66-foot gas pipeline easement. This is a carryover from the preliminary development plan and preliminary plat. The street will be crossing that easement, and so we need some written agreement from Southern Star that yes, this is okay. And 14, the application shall be reviewed and approved by the Johnson County Airport Board and Johnson County Board of County Commissioners prior to the publication and ordinance by the City of Gardner and governing body. And that is all of the final development plan. So I'll turn it back over to you here. We do have, let me find him. We do have Travis here with us, the applicant. So he is available to answer any questions.
Okay. Does Travis have a presentation for this?
I was just going to speak to the comments, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, Travis Schramm, President of Grata Development. When I spoke with you guys regarding the preliminary plat, I discussed as a company how we're trying to replicate the success we've had in other municipalities here in Gardner. I also stressed that we're focusing on creating a value proposition that drives more households to Gardner. When we were requesting these deviations, we were focused on two things. How can we give the homeowner the most bang for their buck? And how can we make the sales process for the homeowner as easy as possible? This ends up making the process for the builder as easy as possible as well. And the builder is really our customer. The Gardner Code, in addition to street trees, requires one small street tree for every linear feet of frontage, or one medium tree for every 100 foot of frontage, to be placed in the front yard, but in back of the right of way. It also requires one additional tree per 10,000 square feet, one shrub per 5,000 square feet. Furthermore, all trees are required, which these would be, are required to follow the tree diversity criteria. That requires 3 genus and 5 species with no more than 20% of any species. This would require us not only to dictate the species of tree for the street trees, which is fairly typical in the city, but to also track the species that are planted on individual lots, and then begin to dictate the types of trees that are planted on each lot as we move forward. The Spring Hill Code, for reference, requires 1 additional tree per lot in addition to street trees. Olathe Code, 2 additional trees per lot in addition to the street trees. Shawnee, 1 additional. Lenexa, 2 additional. There's no calculations. There's no fancy math. The beginning of the sales process for each development, we work up a neighborhood addendum. This is a standard addition to each lot that will be required to add to the base price of each home. So this allows a builder to advertise a flat price for their homes across the city. You then add the base price of the house plus the neighborhood addendum to the lot price. And that lets our builders advertise for our development in Gardner, in Lee Summit or Baser or Lenexa or Shawnee, wherever they're building. I think it's important to note that this plan, these regulations that were brought up frequently in the builder meetings that took place when we were talking about how to, appropriately revise the code to make Gardner a more attractive place for builders to participate. Well, I'm not proposing any code changes tonight. I am just trying to simplify things and make things really easy for our builders that wish to build here in Gardner. I think it's important to note that we're not discounting the value of landscaping. Our plan in this development, in this phase, calls for 116 trees and $33,750 in additional landscaping to be spent on 13.2 acres. That's nearly 9 trees per acre. And that's in addition to over 1,000 tree saplings we've planted in the native areas over the past few months. We believe our proposal facilitates a more transparent sales process. It allows the consumer to get the best value for their money spent and allows a very clear sales process that's transparent from the developer to the builder to the homeowner. As such, we're asking that you approve the recommended motion for the final development plans while striking items 7, 8, 9, and 10 from the recommended motion. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, Travis, thank you. All right, now it's time for commissioner discussion. I'll call you one by one for any comments that you may have. Commissioner Deaton.
I had a question for staff. I'm not positive, maybe I should know this or not, but the trees that are required, they're required to be able to pass code and be able to sell the home. Is there any enforcement on homeowners to keep that landscaping, not to change it? Let's say they don't like the trees or shrubs that were required and they remove them. How does that process work?
Our code enforcement would be responsible with doing that, which is typically by complaint. We don't typically go through Okay, not at all. We don't go through the neighborhoods and count trees and count shrubs because, and while the general tree and shrub requirement was a carryover from our previous code, you know, it's happened over time that the code has changed and trees come and go. And usually the only time we get involved with the landscaping is if it's overgrown or grown over. So we do have the capability for code enforcement. And when our building permits come through with their applications, they're required to have a list of trees and how many and what requirement they do meet. So they don't get a certificate of occupancy for that house until the landscaping is in place, including the sod.
Thank you very much. That was my only question.
Okay. Next, Commissioner Ford.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
I do not have any questions. I am supportive of the recommended motion in its existing form, though. I'll just state that for the record.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McNear.
Yes, I just had a couple of questions for staff. Is there any way we can maybe relax the specifying of species of trees and spacing and still maintain what we're asking for on street trees? Is there any way to be able to maybe try to accommodate a little bit of this, or what's the thought process?
Well, we do work with the builders and developers when they bring in their building plans. Obviously, once you get all of the utilities in and the driveways in, there are some times where we just say, you know what, this tree doesn't necessarily fit here, or you don't have room for a tree because there's a hydrant and a light pole. The thing we don't have on our plans are the light pole locations and some of those things. So we do flex with that at the building permit stage. As far as the genus and species, we do require those different genus and species because of the potential for disease. That way we have, you know, don't have a street that's got all elm trees and then you lose them all because of, you know, a bug. So we require that different layout of the trees. And really at this point, it's the trees along Houston and along the street that connects to 177th off the top of my head. So they'll be installing none of the trees on the arterial, but the ones that are on the collector, probably there's just a couple, but all the street trees. But yes, we do once stuff gets in place, we do flex with it and work with the builders and developers. But this is a general plan. For street trees, it is required by code. And there is the opportunity to deviate from those standards if the commission wishes.
Like Commissioner Hanson, I'm generally in supportive of leaving items 7 through 10 in place. The only thing I'm trying to figure out is if there's any way we can put a deviation together to accommodate a little bit more flexibility in the selection of species. That's it.
And we do have a list as an appendix for our code that are recommended street trees, recommended landscape trees, both large and small. So there is a good list of recommended trees that are good for this area. So it's pretty extensive. So there are many options out there. And we also entertain swapping things out. We understand that there are situations where certain times of the year, certain trees aren't available. So we do work with the applicants, but generally we ask them to vary because of the potential for significant loss for trees because of disease and insects.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Commissioner Mader.
Thank you, Chairman. I am along the lines as well of I think the staff report's very good, and we need to have trees. That's why the code was wrote and such. We had an arborist with us. Just like Michelle stated, there's plenty of options to choose from. So I am in full support of the recommended motion as written, and I still think this is a great project, and we need trees and shrubs. So I have full confidence that staff will work with the developer. That's why there's that administrative process they can work through. So I'm good with the motion as stated. I don't have any other questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons Lee.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. As for myself, I don't mind the proposal of the developer, $1,500 for landscaping and one tree. That really doesn't bother me. I mean, to me, that somewhat hits the intent of the land development code. What I have an issue with is the HOA part. When I moved to Gardner, we were the fourth house in one of the housing developments. And once we got enough houses built and the developer moved out, we decided not to do an HOA. An HOA can be, absolved. Different HOAs run better than others. I actually moved into an HOA where I currently live, and it's ran really well, but some aren't and some aren't. So I'm not really for the HOA part of it myself. So I also would support the motion as written by staff. So that's my comments. Okay. Does anyone have any further comments? You can raise your hand and I'll call you. Okay, not seeing any. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion that after review of application FDP-20-02, a final development plan for Prairie Trace Meadows on a portion of tax ID CF 231429-3002 and final development plan dated April 17, 2020, and staff report dated April 28, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided that the following conditions are met, items 1 through 14 as wrote in the staff report dated April 28, 2020.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner McNair.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Mader and a second by Commissioner McNear. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. We have Prairie Trace Meadows FP-20-02. Michelle.
Yep, let me, if you bear with me, I'm doing multiple jobs here.
Michelle, we'd like to withdraw this application. This is
Okay.
Travis Strong.
The final development plan,
That's correct. We'd like to withdraw the application or continue it to a date uncertain.
which would you like?
Let's do continue to a date uncertain.
Okay. Ryan, is this an issue with doing this during the presentation?
Well, we just took action on the final development plan, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, the body is taking action on it. There is a provision, and I'd have to pull up the code, which allows for withdrawal of an application. Or the body could, by motion and second, ask for reconsideration based upon the request of the applicant to reconsider the action just taken. So those are your options.
This is Commissioner McNair. I had a question for Ryan, please. Right before we read the motion, I think the developer, I think Travis had raised, I think I saw him raise his hand before we went to that motion. Did anybody else see that?
I did not. Though I have to scroll to see.
I did raise my hand.
Okay. I personally don't have if someone make a motion to, as Ryan stated, and Ryan, you might need to state it again for me, but to reconsider our previous motion.
Yeah. So if you can revisit action taken in the meeting, but you have to have a motion and a second, and that motion has to pass, and then you would go back, reconsider the action taken, and revisit that action.
Then this is Commissioner McNair. I would put a motion on the floor that that we reconsider the vote just taken in consideration of the developer having raised his hand before we made the motion.
Okay, as long as that's good enough, Ryan, I'll take a second if anyone wants a second.
Commissioner Deaton, I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner McNair and a second from Commissioner Deaton. Any further discussion on the motion?
I do have a question just to make sure I got it right. Sorry, the audio is a little shaky. So we're taking away the motion because the developer raised his hand as we were getting ready to vote. Is that my understanding on what we're doing? Ryan?
The developer raised his hand to speak. I didn't see it due to having to scroll to see all the participants.
Okay, so normally, right, as we're making a motion during a normal planning commission setting, I know this is not, right? I get it. Would we normally pause when we see a developer waving in the crowd, asking to make a statement as we're getting ready to vote? Would we normally do that?
Well,
he raised his hand before we actually made the motion, and I didn't see it. He didn't have an opportunity to.
Oh, it was made before the motion.
Yeah.
That is correct. I saw it very clearly. Yeah, I thought, oh, what? Wait a minute, Scott. No, it's not a sin, which you didn't, obviously, because you were in a mode where you couldn't see him. He clearly had his hand up like this, saying,
right. But I guess
And the other reason I put the motion out there is because the developer said he wanted to continue to a date uncertain, and based on the advice of counsel, this would be the proper way to handle that.
Right, but that's a request. That's a request made last minute. And typically, Ryan, keep me honest here because you're our legal counsel. But typically, if we are to continue something to a later date, that would be, we would have already made that decision prior to making a motion. I mean, we would have had that during discussion.
Well, I mean, if the continuance was at the request of the developer, that input, you're correct, should have come before a motion, second, and action taken.
The issue here, Commissioner Mater, is that he very well could have been asking to do that before he made the motion, but because I didn't know that he was needed to speak, I didn't see his raised hand. We didn't give him that opportunity. In an actual meeting, we would have saw, he would have raised his hand and we easily would have saw, and he would have been up and stated what he wanted to state before we made the motion. That's how I'm seeing this.
This Commissioner McNear, I would agree.
Okay, just a timing on, how this works, because I'm just thinking that I've never seen, or could recall, a time where we've had oh wait, we've got to pause,
Yeah,
With-
and we
with
haven't
making the
had a Zoom meeting either.
right. Like I said, it's something new. So that's why I was just asking for the clarification, because I wanted to make sure we were doing things the right way according to legal counsel, because I've never seen anything like this before, where we've made a motion, we voted, and then, oh, hey, I think I saw his hand was raised.
Yeah, completely understand. And this has a lot to do with what we're going through this meeting the way we are right now.
Simmons Lee has a hand up.
I have a question. So after we vote to reconsider our vote, what is the next step? Are we voting again for a 30-day continuance?
Well,
We wouldn't have already voted that way. So what's the next step after that?
so basically it's at the discretion of the body. You can make any manner of motion you could have the first go around when you considered action on the final development plan.
This is Commissioner McNear. I had another question just for council. Would it be appropriate for us to, if we continue this, to ask the developer on what basis he wanted to continue to a date uncertain after we've taken action? Would that be appropriate to find out what his thoughts were on that matter?
I mean, that's up to the discretion of the chair. If
I don't know. I just want to know if that'd be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think if that request is being made and the applicant wants this body, the body doesn't have to do that. If the applicant wants this body to entertain that request, then seems logical that he would state that.
So we could ask that now before we continue with the vote on the motion that was made by Commissioner McNear, right?
Correct.
That would be great.
Okay. Travis, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, I think my major concern is when we're looking at.
Wait, hold on. I don't think we have action.
Oh, sorry.
On that motion for reconsideration. I thought we had a motion and a second. We had discussion. I don't think we took action.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if it could be asked before we continued with that motion that we just made.
No, not with a pending motion on the floor.
So could we have the motion removed and then ask him? Or we got to vote and vote it down and then
When we have to vote down the motion.
Okay.
Well, I mean, whoever made the motion could withdraw it.
Can I ask a question, please? Just so I'm clear, if we withdraw the motion, then does our previous vote stand?
Yes.
Done deal?
Right.
Okay.
Well, again, you can correct me, but if you remove your motion, Commissioner McNear, and then we have the developer speak, we could always make the motion again that you made if you want.
Okay. Can we do that? With that?
Well, I just don't know what context that would come under. I mean, previously he was offering comments on an agenda item. We've taken action on that agenda item. And, at this point in time, we're ready to move on to the next agenda item and engage in a discussion on that. So, ultimately what you can do is if you pass the motion to reconsider, then you're back at square one. You can reopen discussion at that point in time. Understand why he's requesting to withdraw the application. And then you can you can go back and revote and take the same action you did take.
Commissioner McNear, you made the motion, so I'm going to let you decide whether you want to continue with it or not.
I'm interested in hearing what the developer has to say, because just because I did see him want to make a comment or put something in out on the table prior to us making that motion, and it sounds like this might be the only way to go back and give him an opportunity to tell us what it is, and an opportunity to tell us whether he wants to continue on or not. I think this is important to our city to understand and make sure that everybody's heard and gets a say.
Okay. And I had a second by Commissioner Deaton. So I've already asked for further comments. We've had that. So now we get ready for a vote. And I am going to call out each person individually on this one, considering it may not be, we may have a different yays and nays. So as part of the vote on this motion, Commissioner Deaton, how do you vote?
Yay.
Commissioner Ford?
This is voting to remove.
To take it back, to continue it, to discuss.
Okay. Then I vote yay.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner McNear?
Yes.
Commissioner Mader?
No.
Commissioner Simmons Lee?
Yay.
And Chairman Bowden and I vote yes. So motion passes 6-1. All right, so we're back, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, we're now back at regular agenda item number 2, Prairie Trace Meadows FDP-20-02 for reconsideration. And I could have the developer speak now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Travis?
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate your willingness to hear me. There was a couple of things that were said by Ms. Leininger during the discussion, and I think they're really important. She talked about these requirements being the bare minimum, the baseline of what we're requiring as a city in our development. And I understand that, and I understand that to be true. But later in her discussion, she talked about swapping things out for placement of streetlights and driveways. She also talked about swapping things out for trees, species, if they're not available. There was a lot of gray area in that. And that's what I look at as a developer when I go in and look at the code. This one is even more specific, because we have made a commitment to the city of Gardner per the development agreement to put up 30 houses a year, or pull 30 building permits a year. So when I review your code and I review these regulations, I'm looking at it from going, what could stop me from crossing that finish line? And by definition, a street tree in the middle of the driveway could stop us from crossing that finish line. And so when I reviewed the code and the requirements, I thought, look, this is the baseline, right? We're talking about taking it above that, obviously. So how do we make that happen? And this is a legal document. And that's why it's really important. So I understand that it's the baseline and that you want great trees. It's not about how many trees. It's not about the shrubs and whatnot. Let's be honest. Most new homes have shrubs in front of them. It's likely to be the case. We have these landscaping allotments that we're talking about. But when we start talking about gray areas, that becomes very concerning to me as a developer, especially when we've made a commitment to pay $15 million to when we miss this, right? We've got big numbers at stake. And so when we're talking about, oh, they'll take care of you when we get to building permit stage, that's a lot of trust and faith when we have something in writing that's the law. And so you know, my request for a continuance at this point is, look, I've got, from my understanding is that was an action. We have another action on the final development plan, and then we have a final plan and a final development plan for the estates as well. I'm not comfortable proceeding when we have to have gray area to get us across the finish line. So I put forth a proposal to try and to help us hit the thresholds that I think Ms. Mader spoke about of, we want trees, we want shrubs. Well, I hope that that's really clear to you when we're talking about requiring an additional tree through the HOA, requiring a certain level of landscaping through the HOA. Maybe that's not the right mechanism, and maybe we continue to go back and find the right mechanism. But a mechanism that Gardner has in place currently that requires gray area to get a building permit on all the lots in a subdivision, I can't get comfortable with that. And that's what I'm trying to get through. It's not about, I don't want to put any trees in. Not the case at all. We planted 1,000 seedlings on that, saplings on that property in the last 90 days. We're, you know, a landscape plan that has the street trees provide the species variation that's what other cities do. Our requirements are following the same guidelines that we're following in Olathe and in Basel and in Spring Hill, if not above them. And so that's where I'm at. I'm trying to avoid gray area. I can't go across the finish line with a development plan that requires gray area to get the building permits done. And if we need to ask for a continuance to see if we can get something that we can all get comfortable with, that's fine. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone that has further questions from the commissioners for the developer or the city? Kelly, you have your hand raised. Why don't you go ahead and speak?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify how this, what Travis is referring to as a gray area happens normally. So if we don't approve the deviations that are shown on here, they would just have to follow the process that all the other developers have followed and which would be when they came for their building permit application and they submit the plot plan. On the plot plan, we require there to be a little table. The table says required number of frontage trees with a number, provided number of frontage trees with a number of trees, quantity of trees. Same with the bushes, same with the open area tree, which can go anywhere on the lot anyway. We don't require them to show the trees in a specific spot. And we don't even require them at that point to tell us what species exactly that they're going to use when they plant. All they have to have on there is a note on the plot plan that says they will meet the diversity requirements. And that's house by house by house. So it all happens at the building permit phase. It's just a little table. There's no way we're going to make somebody put a tree in where a driveway is or anything. We work with them, especially on cul-de-sacs, if there's not room. So I just wanted to clarify how that process actually happens.
Okay.
It's just working directly with their engineer or whoever submits that application.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. If there's any commissioners that would like to speak, if you just raise your hand.
Well, I'm raising it visually. I forgot how I can do it within the little reaction. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not good with this. I use Teams instead of Zoom. So I guess just to kind of clarify my perspective, I wouldn't call it a gray area. Maybe it's more flexibility. And I think Kelly helped to bring that to light because it's flexibility. I wouldn't call it a gray area. I think staff did a really good job writing out in the staff report what's required. And we're not Spring Hill, we're not Basel, we're not Olathe, we're Gardner, and we are going to be different. And that is the whole reason that so much work went into that land development code. Tons and tons and tons of hours. consulting with builders, consulting with developers, tons and tons of hours. So while there are times where there's deviations, I think it's solid and it's good. And it's maybe can be viewed as a gray area. Sorry, my dog's unhappy now. Hey, quiet. But anyways, main point is I think staff does a great job being flexible. So I don't want to call it a gray area, Travis. And I hope maybe that calms some of the concern you might have. I don't want to call it a gray area. I want to call it staff being flexible and working with the developer to bring in the right trees, to place in the right trees, to work with you. I don't want to call it a gray area. So just my little bit of added commentary. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner want to speak?
Yes, this is Commissioner McNair. I just wanted to make a comment. I'm listening to this tonight. What I'd like to be able to do is, I think where the win-win for all this is where we can help our builders and developers that want to come to town, want to build in our community, and make sure that we are listening to their concerns and needs to make sure that they're comfortable in moving forward and investing in a $15 million or whatever, whatever the number is that the developers do. Because a lot of this, and I understand we put a ton of work into a development code, but sometimes the needs of the market may change, and to be able to advance our community and be a good neighbor and a good business partner for builders and developers, we may need to be open to some of the things that they're wanting to do. And I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to get heard, and that we can take the best action possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? All right, not seeing any raised hands or.
There's another raised hand.
Casey's raising her hand.
Commissioner Deaton here. I don't know how to do the raised hand on Zoom either, so I had to wave. I totally understand where Travis is coming from here. If we're gonna vote on something that the developer is not comfortable with, I hate to move forward with something when he feels like there's a gray area, and I don't know how to relieve that. I don't know if that's him and staff working together and bringing us something back later, or what, but I do understand if he feels like there's a gray area and we vote and say, hey, this is what you have to do, and he feels uncomfortable, I think we're doing him a disservice. And like staff was saying, we offer lots of flexibility. Let's lay those flexible options out maybe, just so that everybody feels comfortable moving forward.
Okay. Just for everyone's information, I'm running this off a tablet, so I can't see every commissioner's face. So if you actually physically raise your hand, you may not be one of the commissioners that's on my main screen. So the raised hand is under the participants. You have to click on that, and we have enough participants that I can't see all the participants either. I have to scroll back and forth to see those. And Adriana's got her hands up. Would you like to speak?
I found the raise hand, and just real quick, I wanted to just add to build on to what Commissioner McNair and Commissioner Deaton have stated. We as a planning commission, our job, and staff, please chime in at any time, but I view our role as, we go by the code. We are here to live by the code and make the adjustments where needed, and dollars don't, it's not about dollars to us. Now council has, the governing body is going to have a different perspective, but I just wanted to kind of make sure that, and Michelle, Kelly, you guys kind of add in, but as a commissioner, planning commission is all about code and about the principles of planning and looking at the code and doing what makes sense with the code. If the money doesn't work out according to how it should be, I don't see that as a part of the planning commission duties. So just throwing that additional piece out there. Michelle, Kelly, Larry is on here too. If I'm totally out of left field, please let me know. And I had my hand raised, so I just thought I would throw in an additional perspective from my chair here. Thank you.
And before I call on Kelly, I'll state that and that you're completely correct. We're looking at the code, but we also make deviation rulings, and this one's within our ability on the deviation. So just as my thought on that too. Kelly, would you like to speak, please?
Okay. And I just wanted to, since you asked staff to join in on that one, just to clarify what you're saying is that your job is to understand and enforce the code intent. And if there is flexibility offered, to try to have it meet, the intent of the code as much as possible. And our job as staff is to support you in doing that. And I think the only reason that staff had concerns with this was just because of the uncertainty that we would end up with a result that the landscaping is there. We don't have a mechanism, to make sure that happens when we have to depend on an HOA to enforce it. So, that was our only, we really try very hard to work with Travis and the development team, and you guys have approved a lot of deviations. And so I just want to, commend you on your flexibility and working with the developer that you have done. And just clarify, that was really staff's only concern, is the mechanism.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Michelle, did you just make noise that popped you up there? Or did you
Yeah, I don't have a raise hand option since I'm the host. I want to make sure that it's clear what we're talking about here. The deviation requests were for the landscaping that is required on the lot. What the focus of the discussion has been mainly are street trees. So those are in the street right away. And those are what we typically flex with at the building permit phase. In order to have a more solid landscaping plan with the street trees moving forward, we would have to know every location of utilities. We would have to know every location of driveways. And so that is something that, that's not realistic. So what we do is we put as much on that final development plan for the street trees. Specifically, I'm talking about the street trees, and place them, based on the information we have, place them, and there is a range for those placements. It's between 25 and 40 feet on the local street. Don't quote me on that. That's off the top of my head. So there is a range between there. It's so they don't have to be spaced 40 feet. They can be spaced in between those. So there is that flexibility when we get it to that building permit phase, and it allows for us to say, as Kelly said, not tell people they have to put trees in their driveway, and they can tell us this is where we would like the driveway, and we say, okay, based on the street tree plan, you would need one tree. How about we put it here? And as far as the species and such, it's a requirement of a certain amount of genus and species. So if it comes to be the fall and you can't find a certain maple tree, you cannot find it anywhere, and you need that maple tree in order to get a certificate of occupancy, you're right. We are going to work with you to say, okay, you can't get this maple tree. Tell me a maple tree you can get, and we will flex with that, because that's not going to fly if we say, well, you can't get a CO until you find this exact maple tree. That's where we're flexing. We're trying to give a general layout as far as right now with the best information we have. And all these developers hire landscape architects to give tree specifications and such. So we're relying on those professionals to give us tree species and locations and such. And so when it gets down to it with all the details, as far as the street trees, we flex. We give an opportunity for things to be able to move forward within a certain amount of area. And like Kelly said, if there is a situation on a cul-de-sac where it's just not going to happen, we may say, fine, it's not going to fit. We get that. We're not going to make you put in something that is just going to die.
Okay.
So I want you to make sure that you're kind of separating out the street tree issue and the landscape on site as to what the deviation request for, because those are two different things.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Larry?
Scott, it seems to me that we've had adequate conversation. If we can get back to the issue on hand, Mr. Travis has made a request, I believe, to defer or continue the action. We've reconsidered and taken a vote to take us back to the point where that can be done. I don't know, and this is up to Ryan, I don't know if the action that's needed is to actually revote on the action taken or just to defer to a date certain and continue the meeting with this action in place. Ryan, what's the best possible way to continue?
Well, let me activate my video here. So you're back to where you were before we took action originally. Any of those options are on the board, and it's the pleasure of the Planning Commission as to what motion they want to make.
Okay. Travis, are you still looking for a continuance?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There's not any further discussion with the board. Someone could make a motion if they so choose to continue FDP-20-02 until actually, would it be all of regular agenda item 2? Continue it to the next planning commission meeting?
Well, right now you're only considering that you've only called agenda item, what is that, 2A or whatever?
Yeah, 2A. Okay. So I would need if someone's wanting to make a motion to continue this to the next planning commission meeting, FDP-20-02, they can make that motion.
This is Commissioner McNear. I had a question for attorney. Would it be better to table or to continue?
So tabling it calls it back automatically at the next meeting. Continuing it, if you're going to continue it, you're going to continue it to a date certain. So if you're going to continue it to the next meeting, tabling has the same effect. If the developer thinks you might need more time, you can continue it out further than that.
So if we table it or continue it to the next meeting and the developer is still uncomfortable, can he withdraw at that point before the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put a motion on the table I'm going to put a motion out that we table this to the next planning commission meeting.
So
item 2A.
Commissioner McNair makes a motion to table till the next meeting.
Commissioner Ford, second.
Okay, Commissioner Ford has a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes to table this item until the next meeting, 7-0. Okay, item 2B.
So now that you've called this, if the developer wants to, shortchange this and indicate that he'd like this one to be tabled as well, that'd be appropriate.
We'd like to table 2B and 3, A and B.
All right. So I'll take was there any discussion by the commission? Ryan, could we just do that all in one motion, 2B, 3A, and 3B to table it?
Yeah, you would need to call those other two items
Individually.
consideration as well.
Okay. All right. I'll look for a motion to table item 2B.
Commissioner Ford here. Motion to table discussion item 2B.
Commissioner McNair, second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Ford and a second by Commissioner McNair to table item 2B. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just real quick, Scott, just so I'm on the record, I had to step away for a minute. I could still hear you. So we are tabling, correct? Then item 2B. Is
Correct.
that what I heard? Okay, thank you.
Without any further discussion on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. All right, now we're calling item 3A, which we have asked for it to be tabled by the developer. So I would accept a motion to table that, barring any discussion by the commission.
I
Commissioner
would make that
McNair,
motion.
so moved.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner McNair. Who was the second?
I'll second that motion, Commissioner Hanson.
And Commissioner Hanson provides a second to table regular agenda item 3A. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. I now call regular item 3B. If there's no discussion by the commissioners, I would accept a motion to table item 3B.
Commissioner Ford here. So moved.
Second, Commissioner McNair.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Ford and a second by Commissioner McNair to table regular agenda item 3B. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 7-0. Okay, we're on to regular agenda item 4A, PP-20-04.
I think that's me. Okay. Wait 1 second. Let me pull my file here. All right. Does everybody see it?
Yes.
Fantastic. My name's Bob Case. I'm a planner with the department. And this is item 4A and 4B, Quick Trip Store, number 294, first plat. We're going to first discuss the preliminary plat, PP 2004, Then I'll recommend a motion, and then we'll go on to the final plat after that. The site is located at the southwest corner of 188th Street and Gardner Road and consists of approximately 9 acres. The property was annexed into the city back in 2001 and rezoned from agricultural to C3 commercial. In 2003, the property was platted as part of the Sheens Crossing subdivision and re-subdivided as lots 5 through 8 of Sheens Crossing second plat. Currently, there are no improvements on the site. The preliminary plat shows 2 lots being re-subdivided from lots 5 through 8 of Sheens Crossing second plat subdivision. The total area of this property is, again, approximately 9 acres, with the Quick Trip site consisting of approximately, which is also lot 1, 6.4 acres. Site plan is for a gas station / convenience store. The city has been working with KDOT engineers on proposed road improvements to 188th Street, which is also, as it continues down to the south, it becomes Locust Road, along with their intersection with Gardner Road. These road improvements are scheduled to coincide with the construction of the Quick Trip. Access to lot 1 is off of Gardner Road and 188th Street / Locust Road. Lot 2 will have access onto Gardner Road through an internal road within the site. All utilities are available to the site. And in case everybody forgot, this is what we had come up last year for the elevations on the building. I know everybody likes pretty pictures. So this is how the store is going to look. Along with the, it's also a travel plaza for over-the-road truckers for them to get fuel. And then also they're going to have approximately 16 vehicle fueling stations at the front of the site. Staff findings on the preliminary plat. Again, the site is combining 4 platted lots into 2 lots. The plat is consistent with the I-35 and Gardner Road sub-area plan. All technical reviews have been submitted and accepted. The plat meets the requirements of the Land Development Code. All utilities, again, are available to the site, and therefore no extensions are proposed at this time. Staff recommendation is staff recommends approval of PP-20-04, a 2-lot preliminary plat for Quick Trip store number 0294. And presented before you is the suggested motion. And I'll let you guys open up the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Thought I saw the developer on here. Is it Eric Eckhart? Would you like to speak?
This is Eric Eckhart. I'm on here. It's telling me I can't do a video for some reason, so you might not be able to see me, but I am here if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Eric. All right, on the Planning Commission discussion, Commissioner Deaton.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ford?
No questions.
Commissioner Hanson?
No questions here.
Commissioner McNear?
No questions.
Commissioner Mader?
No questions.
Commissioner Simmons Lee?
No questions.
I have no questions either. So with no further questions, I would accept a motion.
After review, Commissioner McNear, after review of application PP-20-04, a preliminary plat for Quick Trip store number 0294 plat located at the southwest intersection of Gardner Road and 188th Street, tax IDs CP 784700000005, CP 784700000006, CP 784700000007, and CP 784700000008 and preliminary plat dated March 5th, 2020, and staff report dated April 28th, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed.
And a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that you, Adriana?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNear and a second by Commissioner Mader. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Now we have 4B.
Okay. All right, let's go down. All right, the final plat. Final plat really shows a clear picture of the lot layout on this site. It also shows the new road alignment for 188th Locust Road on the northwest side of the proposed subdivision. Again, lot 1 is the new location for the Quick Trip store, while lot 2, located on the southeast side of the subdivision, is set aside for future commercial development. Staff findings that the final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat. Any public improvement plans shall be submitted and approved prior to the release of the final plat for recording. And there will be no excise tax to be levied on this plat because it has already been platted. Staff recommends approval of FP 2005, a final plat for Quick Trip store number 294, and recommends the Planning Commission send the recommendation to the governing body to accept the dedications of right-of-way and easements.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant like to speak on this?
Again, nothing to add to Bob's presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you. Commissioner Deaton.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Ford.
No questions.
Commissioner Hanson.
No questions here.
Commissioner McNear.
No questions.
Commissioner Mader.
No questions.
Commissioner Simmons Lee.
No questions.
And I have no questions either. So with no further questions, I would accept a motion.
Commissioner Ford here. After review of application FP 2005, a final plat for Quick Trip number 0294 plat, located at the southwest intersection of Gardner Road and 188th Street, tax ID CP 784700000005, CP 784700000006, CP 784700000007, and CP 784700000008, and a final plat dated March 5th, 2020, a staff report dated April 28th, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met. 1, public improvement plans shall be submitted and approved prior to the release of final plat for recording at the county, and recommends the governing body accept dedication of right-of-way and easements.
I have a second.
Commissioner McNear, second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Ford and a second by Commissioner McNear. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor state aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. All right, regular agenda item number 5A 0-20-06, which is a public hearing item. So I'll just, and it has a rezoning, which I believe, just double check if anybody's had any ex parte contact on the rezone. No one's speaking, so no, wait, I have a raised hand. not by a commissioner. So Commissioner Ford?
Mr. Ford's raising his hand.
Sorry, I can't find the raise hand button in the participants. Our neighborhood Facebook group has asked different questions and stuff about it. That's the only contact that I've had.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go along and make that statement as well. I live over in St. John's, and there's been discussion. I've not been participating, but there is that communication out there with discussion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone further?
I have something, if you can hear me.
Colin?
Yes. My name's Colin Bonebrake. I'm a local police officer here in the county. I live in the St. John's Highlands subdivision.
Colin.
And yes.
We haven't started the public hearing yet.
Oh, my bad. All right, hang on.
Yeah, we'll get to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So time for city planner.
Okay, let me get this shown up for you here. Okay, can you see my slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, Kelly Drake Woodward, Chief Planner. This is a request to rezone 14 acres from RP2 planned to family residential district to RP3 planned garden apartment district. It's accompanied by a preliminary development plan that's intended for a mix of 18 4-unit row house buildings and 2 2-unit duplex buildings. And this is a public hearing item. The property includes 14 acres of land located less than a quarter mile north of West 175th Street along Kill Creek Road, north of the Gardner Municipal Airport. The site was annexed on September 5th, 2000. It has been rezoned several times, but has remained undeveloped. It was first rezoned from agriculture to a planned district as part of a larger development to include 140.9 acres of single-family residential detached homes, row houses, and multi-family housing adjacent to non-residential development. It was rezoned in 2004 to the RP2 planned 2-family residential district as part of an envisioned development to also include the office district, planned garden apartment, and single-family residential districts. This shows you the adjacent zoning. North of the subject property, there's a parcel that was recently approved for rezoning from R1 to R2 for Breckenwood Creek subdivision. Abutting the eastern boundary of the property across the vegetated stream corridor are 5 single-family residences in the Double Gate 4 subdivision. Abutting the southern property boundary are 4 duplex lots in the Prairie Brook subdivision. And then west of the subject property across Kill Creek Road are multiple parcels with RP3 zoning for planned apartments. This area has long been envisioned for this mix of residential housing densities and non-residential uses. You can see on the slide also, just for your reference, the Waverly Plaza commercial and residential apartment development, the high school, and the municipal airport. So as far as existing conditions, the property is not platted. It's in agricultural use. Development will be accessed from an existing collector street, which is Kill Creek Road that runs through the middle of the slide there, and an extension of a local street, which is Pratt Street. An existing 8-inch sewer main, sanitary sewer main bisects the subject parcel, that's shown in green. An underground electric exists near the south and east boundaries, which is the red. 8-inch water mains exist along 173rd Street, Pratt Street, and Kill Creek Road. There's an existing fire hydrant at the intersection of the subject parcel with Kill Creek Road, and stormwater infrastructure exists on Kill Creek Road. And so the other thing is that the parcel contains an existing stream and floodplain, and those are shown in the blue shading. This is a view from Pratt Street looking north. A view at the north end of the parcel of the Kill Creek drainage area as it exists now. And then a view of the access off of Kill Creek area, the little street stub, and the duplexes that are existing to the south of the development. This is just to give you some context on those existing duplexes to the south. It has a similar size footprint to the proposed row house buildings. And there's another one. And this is, these are the single family homes that are adjacent across, that's separated from the development by a vegetated stream corridor. So the parcel is indicated for low density residential future land use on the future land use plan or the comprehensive plan. The future land use plan has recently been updated for portions of the community as part of the Main Street Corridor Plan exercise. And the sub-area plans around the highway interchanges. But this area has not been updated since the adoption of the plan in 2014. The Planning Commission has initiated an amendment to look at other areas to see if they need to be updated as far as future land use. Note that the current future land use plan is not consistent with the current zoning of RP3 across Kill Creek Road. That's been in place since 2004. Low density residential is defined in the plan, and the land development code is as consistent with single family, duplex, and triplex uses arranged in a low density format on larger lots with buildings in character with typical single family homes. So this is a view of the development plan, which includes 20 lots on 7.34 acres. There's 2.22 acres of right of way and 4.46 acres of open space for a total of 14. There are a total of 76 dwelling units proposed that consists of 18 4-unit townhomes and two 2-unit duplexes. The duplexes are on lots 8 and 10, and those are starred on the plan. All the rest of them are for the row house building type. And then we reviewed this to the local neighborhood street type and the trail greenway open and civic space type. And the proposed frontage type is buffer edge. So I just wanted to give you an idea, sort of the proposed density of this development. As presented, it's a lower density pattern because they have exceeded the minimum required lot area by quite a bit, and that supports a substantially lower building coverage % than the maximum that would be allowed. So as you can see there, the required minimum lot area, and then next to it, the proposed average lot area. And so for both of these building types, they have exceeded the lot area minimums. Also with the building maximum building coverage, you can see that for duplexes, it's 30%, and row house is 70%. Overall, their proposed building coverage is only in the low 20%. So, and just for another reference point, the average proposed lot size, if you add all these lots up in there together, is 15,985 square feet. The average lot size of those existing duplexes just to the south are just slightly larger at 16,706 square feet. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a scale comparison between the proposed buildings and the duplexes to the south, just to give you some context. Although the proposed row house buildings contain more dwelling units, the overall building footprint at 2,568 square feet is comparable to a duplex or triplex. The existing duplexes in that subdivision to the south have that comparable building footprint and scale, as you can see on the slide. 80 foot wide, 41 deep for those duplexes, or at least for the one that I looked at. And 77.5 feet for the length of the fourplex and 40.5 foot deep. If you have questions later, we can go back to this. These are the proposed or planned elevations for the row houses. I know it's hard to get an idea of the character when you're looking at just a flat pencil drawing like this, and I can let the developer speak to this a little bit more, but I think they're designed so that the 3-bedroom units on the ends will have a half bath and a laundry on the ground floor, and a 3/4 and a full bath on the upper level with the bedrooms. And then the 2-bedroom units in the middle have a half bath on the ground floor and a full bath and laundry upstairs with bedrooms. So, and each unit has a single car garage. This is the proposed duplex elevation. They had sent that in just so that our building codes people could start looking it over. And then they sent us a picture of an existing duplex that they have built elsewhere, just to show some of the design detail. And I'll also let the applicant speak to you about that. So when we look at the comprehensive plan goals and the things that this development would address in the comprehensive plan, it does support that ongoing investment in housing and attract new residents and ensure that the housing stock responds to a variety of users, including young professionals, new families, empty nesters, and seniors in need of assistance. We anticipate it will provide a range of options to allow support for all income levels and encourage the development of housing and support services to allow seniors to age in place. Also, the comprehensive plan calls for a goal of promoting infill residential development within incomplete subdivisions and ensuring that those new developments are sited within close proximity and with access to schools and parks. The flexibility that the plan calls for where necessary to accommodate those varieties of housing types and intensities. They also address this development also would be addressing civic and environmental goals of the plan. The associated preliminary development plan includes dedication of land for a trail as consistent with the future trails shown on the bike and pedestrian plan of the comprehensive plan. And it also preserves the greenway corridor that follows Kill Creek and serves as that natural flood mitigation infrastructure and the ecological corridors of our environmental features plan. We also had a market analysis along with the Main Street Corridor Plan. It had some very helpful information to consider pertaining to this development as well. That analysis stated that much of Gardner's growth since 2000 has been driven by young families looking for more affordable housing options. And since the Great Recession of 2008, a higher percentage of households and families are renting rather than purchasing their homes. And the demand for that renter-occupied housing has overwhelmingly been driven by households with an income range between $35,000 and $50,000. So this housing demand could continue into the foreseeable future as this income range corresponds with the estimates of the income earning potential of workers at LPKC and the New Century Air Center. And households in this income range are largely priced out of the home ownership market in Gardner, which was found in this analysis. Low-income housing tax credit financing, the analysis stated was one promising potential source of gap financing for housing. And so the income range of households showing the highest demand for the renter-occupied housing falls between 50 and 80% of the US housing and urban development area median income. And so these households that would qualify for that program. So, and just to give you an idea, at a rent level of $1,150 per month, a household would need to earn approximately $3,800 per month or $45,600 a year to pay only 30% of their income in housing costs. And that's the number that housing advocates generally consider affordable for most households. Staff findings are, with this plan context, the proposed multifamily buildings are comparable in size and scale to existing adjacent duplexes, separated from existing single-family uses by large vegetated stream buffer. The overall pattern is a lower density format based on larger lot sizes that's consistent with the character of the neighborhood. The development addresses the changing housing needs and demand as presented in the Gardner Main Street corridor market analysis. The infill lot has remained long undeveloped and offers some limitations having to do with the floodplain, stream setback, existing road connections, and existing infrastructure. The smaller blocks support greater walkability, and the larger lots support greater open space and a feeling of lower density, which is more consistent with existing land use patterns. And the developer is attempting to bring much needed workforce housing to the city of Gardner. This kind of housing is in demand in almost every community, but will be especially consistent with the needs of people working in the nearby job centers. The applicant has requested flexibility in the standards to accommodate a housing type that will meet the affordability guidelines associated with various funding sources that are being leveraged to provide the housing. So increasing the supply of affordable housing supports the long-term security, health, safety, and welfare of the community. There are several deviation requests associated with this development, so don't pay too much attention to the numbers on each of them, although the numbers correspond with the number on the actual plan. The deviations were numbered on that plan, so although I've grouped them by category, there should be every number here. So I'm going to start with the ones for the duplexes. Deviation number 12. If you approve this deviation, we would have to add that to the list of approved deviation requests on the plan. This relates to the front entry features that are required on the duplex building type. Duplexes, well, all ones that are required to have front entry features are required to have one of 3 options. And those options come with measurements and elements that they're supposed to include. And so they have chosen a stoop, an enclosed stoop, and our requirement is that it's 8 foot by 8 foot and has some ornamental features to accent the door. You can see there what they proposed, and the applicant might be able to explain this a little bit better. Just a little bit smaller area. But I do want to point out also that the duplexes are designed for ADA accessibility. And so when they requested this deviation, it has to do with the 0 entry threshold that they're trying to maintain for the people with mobility challenges to get into these units. So staff does support this deviation request. We don't see any anticipated incompatibilities there. And as I said, if you approve it, you will need to add it to the list of approved deviation requests, or they will need to add it to the approved deviations on the plan. Deviation number 4, building design standards for the duplex. This has to do with those garage limits that we've talked with you about before. So the limit for these front-loaded garages is 25% of the front facade. If you set them back, it can be up to 45%. And what they're proposing is 63%. And actually, as measured by the way we measure by using just the garage door, it would be about 56%. So the code calls for these buildings that have a close relationship to the streetscape and or narrow lots that have frequent repetition on the block to have limits to those garages, or if they can't meet those limits, to have different accesses, side or rear accesses. Based on the other developers that we've seen since the code was adopted, we do acknowledge that accommodating those side or rear access garages may increase development costs due to the increase in impervious surfaces or increase in lot sizes. And that may not be consistent with providing that long-term housing affordability. So the code does allow administrative adjustments for building design standards when an equal or better alternative is provided. So when you're considering a building design deviation, you can think about that in that equal or better light. And so what they're doing is they're using those larger lot sizes and reduced building coverage. So they're not having those narrow lots. So there's less frequent repetition along the block. The buildings are set back further, which further reduces the impact of those garages. And also those duplexes are designed to meet those ADA standards, providing a different but much needed community benefit. And so staff does support this deviation request. The next one for duplexes is for the frontage type for the duplex buildings. This one's pretty simple. There are two types of frontage standards that are available for duplexes. But as this is a part of a bigger development where there's only 2 duplexes and 18 row houses, and the row house building type allows the buffer edge frontage type, they just want to apply that buffer edge frontage type to the entire development so it'll be consistent. And we do support this request. It would be very impractical to apply a different frontage type just along the one cul-de-sac in front of the 2 lots. And the last one, I think, for the duplexes is the access width limits. This kind of goes along with the garage limits. So they're related. You should consider them together because they impact each other. And so it also goes with the one I just went over too, because there is a different standard for the neighborhood yard frontage type, which is the required frontage type, than the buffer edge frontage type. So regardless, what they're proposing is a deviation from either one of those. They're proposing a 32% access width, or it's actually a 26-foot wide driveway on lot 8 and a 28% access width or 26 wide driveway on lot 10. So the intent of this standard is basically to create aesthetics that would support compact and walkable development, such as less concrete and fewer driveway crossings for pedestrians, more landscaping. Based on the reasoning in support of the increase in the front-loaded garage widths and deviation 4 that I just discussed, and provided that you do approve that garage limit deviation, we are also supportive of the corresponding deviation to increase the driveway width. It's our thought that since these units are intended for people with mobility challenges, it makes sense to design the driveways with just that straight, convenient, easy access. Okay, the row house deviation request. This is similar to the one we discussed for the duplexes on the front entry features. In this case, the different dimensions for the stoop are related to a fire separation design, and you have their full statement in your staff report, and also to accommodate natural lighting through that front door area. So, and staff is also supportive of this deviation, finding that this creates community benefits by creating that workforce housing, and we don't see any anticipated incompatibilities based on this deviation. The next one is for the row house lot width. This is really a minimal deviation request, especially considering this is an infill site. The code establishes this range that these row house lots should be within as far as lot width. You can see it's based on a per unit basis. So for a fourplex, the range would be 72 to 144 feet lot width. These are 152, 150 foot. So they're just barely over the 144 foot maximum. So we do support this deviation. This is a similar deviation request, and what they're doing is they just got this land, they got to divide it up. They've got all these limitations based on where the streets are, where everything hooks in where the floodplain is. So they're just dividing the land that they have up into these lots. And so in this case, they have a few lots that exceed the upper limit of the lot area requirement, which is 18,000 square feet. And you can see some of them are also barely over. One of them is only 19 square feet over, if we're accurate. So we also support, staff also supports this minimal deviation request. This is for the row house front setback. It also has a range for row houses. They're supposed to be setback between 10 and 25 feet. And almost all of these lots do exceed that 25-foot maximum setback. I've calculated the average and the mean there for you. But I do want to point out that staff did suggest that the applicant propose this greater front setback because we were concerned. We wanted there to be more opportunity to accommodate off-street parking and not have so much on-street parking. So especially since two of the cul-de-sacs do not have, well, two of the cul-de-sacs don't have homes on the end of the cul-de-sac. So there is some opportunity there without driveway openings for accommodating on-street parking. But the row houses that are on Pratt Street and Valley Spring Court have limited opportunity for on-street parking. So we support this deviation request that will allow more cars to be off the street. And deviation request 10. And this is the access with limits for the row houses. And this one might, all the lots are expected to exceed the 25% maximum lot width for access. But the tricky thing here is that there is no garage limit for the front loaded garages in the R3 district. And so since the front loaded garages are not restricted in this district, it makes sense that you have to accommodate those front driveways and that you would probably exceed that standard if you do accommodate them. But as they've designed them, they have designed those driveways to narrow at the right of way. So trying to minimize that as much as possible. And then the two driveways for the middle units are combined, and that's where you get that 22-foot wide driveway. But these are all designed to go up to a single car garage. The end units have a little flare out so they can park an extra car on the side of the driveway. Okay, and the general deviation requests, there's 3 of them. This is also a very minimal deal. The code requires blocks to be 500-foot minimum length. Based on the limitations of this infill site, all the blocks are less than 500 feet long. And while the code does not provide for shorter blocks, the development does meet other block intent standards by arranging the development to be least disruptive to the topography and preserving those natural features. And the code does call for a particular block layout unless there's overriding development patterns outside the control of impact. So staff is supportive of this deviation request. The code requires blocks to be a minimum of 5 acres. This is a similar deal. All the blocks are less than 5 acres. This is an infill site. We support this deviation request. And finally, this is one we would recommend that the Planning Commission discuss. It's the required bicycle parking. And you can see that the multifamily uses are required to have 1 bicycle parking space per dwelling unit when they're near a trail. This development is proposing no bicycle parking. So, you know, we do recognize that every dwelling unit has an attached garage, and it may be possible for the bicycles for the tenants to be stored in the garage. But it might be beneficial to provide at least some bicycle parking adjacent to the trail access points so that visitors' bicycles would also be secure. So Then I wanted to talk to you about a recommended condition of approval. You may recall that I suggested that they have requested the buffer edge frontage type to be used for the entire development. And so this is the front 8 foot of the lot that's adjacent to the sidewalk would be required to have a certain number of trees and shrubs in that buffer edge. And so in looking at this development and the multiple driveways that come out on those cul-de-sacs, it just really seems we're not going to be able to accommodate that landscaping there. And staff recommends that instead of implementing that buffer edge frontage type along those cul-de-sacs, you would instead implement that all along Pratt Street and then along Kill Creek Road. And so this is shown in the green. So instead of taking it up and around each of those cul-de-sacs, it would be in the areas shown in green. And so what this basically does is it buffers this development really from the road, from Kill Creek Road, kind of creates its own little private area. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning and associated preliminary development plan with the conditions outlined in the recommended motion. Please note if the condition reads potential deviation, that's the one we've recommended that you discuss. And if after discussion you do not support the deviation as proposed by the application, then the Planning Commission would format some kind of condition of approval related to that deviation. Either that they would meet the code standard or some other amended deviation. And we can help you through that. So here's the recommended motion. After review of application Z2006, rezoning of 14.02 acres located north of the intersection of Kill Creek Road and West 174th Street, parcel ID CF221-422-4007. From RP2, Plan 2 Family Residential District to RP3, Plan Garden Apartment District, and Associated Preliminary Development Plan, PDP 2002, for Prairie Brook Villas, dated April 17, 2020, and a staff report dated April 28, 2020. The Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the application subject to the following conditions: that the stormwater plan and traffic study shall be approved prior to the approval of any final development plan or final plat. Because of the unique context and access configuration of this development, which limits the provision of contiguous green space in the frontage area, the buffer edge frontage type will be implemented along Kill Creek Road and Pratt Street rather than on the cul-de-sacs to better meet code intent. Potential condition, this is the one you would discuss, regarding deviation 11, which is the bicycle parking. And then the final condition is to revise the deviation requests on sheet 2 of the plan to reflect what has been approved, including the addition of deviation 12 regarding the front entry feature for the duplex building type. Okay, and that is all I have for you, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Kelly?
Just clear, just a comment. Staff, great job. That was a lot of hard work and a lot of thought and work went into that. But I was impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, these are just for Kelly because this is going to be a public hearing item, which will be opened up next. Eric, did you have something for Kelly?
Yeah, Kelly, could you go back and just kind of briefly go through the four, let me find it here, the fourplexes and the row houses. I know you didn't have a lot of really good visuals of what the row houses look like, but give us what you do have and then show me the fourplex again, if you don't mind.
This is the duplex. Can remember if you asked about that one. These are the 3 different variations on the row houses that they've submitted to date. And remember, this is just the preliminary stage. So typically we don't really get into those final design details into the final development plan.
Does that help you, Commissioner Hanson?
And the fourplex, where was the fourplex at?
This is the fourplex.
Oh, okay, okay. So the fourplex and the row house is basically one and the same.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
You
Okay.
see the 4 different garages, so they're vertical units here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I can't see the hand. I believe Commissioner Mader, did you have a, yeah. Commissioner Mader.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I know we're gonna have the public hearing and we're gonna hear from the developer to speak, but I was just interested to know why there was only 2 lots with proposed duplexes, because a main point that I kept seeing come across was to allow seniors to age in place. And I think the ADA community is really in need. And I know that we're going to have the developers, I think, is on with us, and we'll probably hear from him, but just throwing that out there, you know, I'm interested to hear. I appreciate the work that staff's put into it, and I think this is a good potential project. So looking forward to the discussion. I know it's public hearing time, Scott, so just wanted to kind of get that out there so the developer was prepared for a question that I was going to ask if he didn't already address it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, without any further hands, it looks like we'll now open the public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand if you figured out how to do that on Zoom. Individuals allotted 3 minutes and individual representative groups allotted 7 minutes. When I call your name, you can speak, you give your name and your address, please. And Colin, you can go now.
All right. Sorry about that earlier. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. So like I said, I'm a local police officer here in the county. I've lived in this subdivision for about a year now. This is my first house. My fiance and I live here, really like the area. I just have some concerns, and going to talk kind of on my experience as an officer in the county and what I see with different housing types. So kind of the first section that I outlined was I don't think that it fits with the plan very well. Page 4 of the plan states that it is not consistent with low density. It outright says that. Page 4, items 1 through 3, I think will be met with the development of the Breckenwood Creek subdivision that's going to be built behind and around the current neighborhood. I think that'll open up a lot of different housing types. The plan also states that housing is already affordable within the city. I would tend to agree with that. That's why we moved here. Let's see, page 55, neighborhood and quality housing are defining attributes of the character and identity of the city. I don't think that that really fits with the current subdivision that we have here. Page 42, establish positive controls that promote high quality residential building in the encourage construction of single family homes. Breckenwood Creek, those are going to be single family homes. We have a lot of single family homes in here now. There's plenty of available rental properties in the area. A lot of the newer construction homes in here are rental properties now. Let's see, move on to page 6, I believe, states that the large vegetative stream corridor is a buffer. I measured that online. It's about 115 feet. I think large is kind of generous. Page 5 talks about the low income housing tax credits, which will come back in the crime section that I'm going to talk about. So the home project and affordable housing trust, I Googled both of those. Both of those are directed at low income housing. I don't think that really fits with the area. This is by no means, large luxury homes, but I would say the average cost of a home in here is probably 180 to 220,000. I think that that's probably pretty consistent. And both of those projects state the goal is to preserve the affordable housing for extremely low income houses. It then goes on to say that it's targeted towards first responders and young professionals, which I am both, and I can afford to live here with no issues. Also looking at the future of the area, what's it going to look like in 20, 30 years? Is it going to be all houses, or is it going to be built up in apartment complexes with pockets of houses? So I'll move on to the next section, which is crime. I experience this every day at work, and I experience it differently through, different housing types. So single family homes generally have less problems. Multifamily homes, a little bit more. Apartments more, and then low income housing quite a bit more. Talking about the number of calls for service, the types of calls for service, and the calls relative to a specific geographic area and how densely populated that area is. So I went on the Gardner website and looked at the crime statistics and pulled some of those numbers just from the past year. So Nottingham Village, which is about 188th and Gardner Road, that is a low income apartment district. And I pulled the stats from that. It's on the website. Everyone can go see that. There's 24 records that's only reports done. That doesn't include calls for service that maybe a report wasn't done or something like that. But I have those statistics here. So we have 1 DUI, 2 assaults, 5 narcotics arrests, a traffic violation, which is pretty insignificant, 5 child in need of care calls, a domestic battery, 2 information reports that could be any number of things, 2 warrant arrests, again, that could be municipal traffic violation warrant arrests, violation of a protection order, aggravated assault on a police officer, which that's going to be with a deadly weapon, theft, criminal threat, that's a felony, and criminal damage to property. Again, that's Nottingham Village, a low-income housing district at 188th and Gardner Road. Same time frame for St. John Highlands, single-family residential. We had 16 reports for the entire neighborhood. Those are 1 count of aggravated child endangerment, 1 breach of privacy in a sexual nature, 2 domestic batteries, 2 identity thefts, which the victim may have lived in the neighborhood, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it occurred there. Violation of a protection order, 2 theft reports, a traffic offense. Again, that's kind of insignificant. A criminal threat, which is a felony. Criminal damage to property, 2 animal ordinances, a DUI, and a runaway juvenile. How am I doing on time?
You're getting close.
Okay. All right. I'll try to wrap this up. So then I looked at just the Prairie Brook duplexes just to the south there. 10 records in the same time frame, 1 aggravated indecent liberties with a child, 3 assaults, a theft, 3 narcotics complaints, distribution of narcotics, and interference with law enforcement. So I think what that illustrates, and it's consistent with what I see on a day-to-day basis, is the more people you have in a geographic area, the more problems you are going to have. And, I don't think that meshes well with this neighborhood and what we've got going on here. The last thing I'd just like to touch on really quick is the traffic and the parking. They're proposing 76 units be built. I forget which page it's on. I had it written down, but there was a statistic on the website, on the Gardner website, that says rental households are generally larger in size. I think it's in the community profile, and it talks about there's more people per rental unit than other units. So what that's going to bring up is, we've got possibly 2 to 3 cars per rental unit. And there's also, it talks about incentives in the home program and low income housing program for more people per household, which means more cars, short driveways, slab construction. So I'm assuming there's not going to be a basement for storage. If the garage is used for storage, then cars will be parked either in the driveway or on the street. Again, we're talking 2-3 cars per household potentially, which is a concern for fire apparatuses, police, and ambulance to access the neighborhood. Also traffic concerns about 175th and Kill Creek, Waverly, and the stop sign at Santa Fe and US 56. I went ahead and counted all of the houses on kind of the east side there of our neighborhood. There's 217 houses. I figured 2 cars per household at 434 cars. If an additional 76 units would add an additional 152 cars to the traffic in that area, which is going to mean more crashes. There's lots of kids that play out here. So there's definitely a concern there. I'm trying not to go too much over on time because I know I'm probably over, but I don't think it fits with the community that we have going on here. I don't think that there's a whole lot of benefit to the subdivision. There's going to be higher crime rates, higher calls for police, diminished appeal to the area, influx in traffic, and I don't think that it's a good fit. So thank you for hearing me out there.
Thank you, Colin. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I don't see any other raised hands.
The developer, Michael Snodgrass, is here. I think he wants to speak. I'm not sure he knows. Michael, can you unmute your mic, or Michelle, do you need to do that?
I was just making sure there wasn't anyone from the public left.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
There's some other people on here, but I don't see anyone else looking to speak at this time using this Zoom method. So if the developer would like to speak, the developer may speak now. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me or see me?
You're really soft.
Volume to see if that works.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, is my video on? I can't tell if it is or isn't. Okay. All right, so I'm Michael Snodgrass. I'm with the Oikos Development Corporation, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit. I mean, we're really here working to try to provide more workforce housing to the area. I've been working in nonprofits doing exactly this for about 29 years. And
Hey, Michael.
yeah.
Does your mic happen to be to your left? Anytime you turn your head to your left, you come through clear, but when you speak straight ahead, you're.
I'm not sure, but does that sound okay over here?
I can hear you better there.
Okay, so I'll kind of scooch up to the computer too. I'm on a regular computer instead of an iPad, which I typically like to use for this. But so I've been working on these type of developments. Let me just start by some of the comments about the Section 42 tax credits. It's actually an IRS code in the tax law that provides funding for providing different types of housing. In this case, the housing, this goes back to some of the comments by one of the commissioners about why not too many ADA units. Well, you know, we chose on this and in this particular area to focus on workforce housing, but we really wanted to make sure we had housing that would meet all different demographics, and including seniors or anybody with any sort of disability. And so Section 42 tax credits allow for incomes anywhere from wherever you choose up to 80% of median income. The 80% of median income will fit everybody that was quoted in the 30 to 50,000 range for incomes, including, it does include, we do get a lot of school teachers that end up living in our units. We do end up having a lot of first-time police officers, a lot of first-time responders that end up living there. Because to buy a house, as homes continue to grow, and I've built a lot of homes, it's harder and harder to build homes and keep them affordable for people that are below that range and working families. It's really priced a lot of people out of that first-time home buyer. And I do focus on a lot of that in a lot of neighborhoods. So I did want to say that, you know, we will have a mixed income approach on this, try to fit as many working families into different categories as we can, but we have a range of incomes and they'll be assured of not paying more than 30% of their income for these for their rent. So in terms of some of the other items of concern, you know, I've built a lot of these over the years. This is a little bit different than some of what was mentioned, and I pulled up some of what the police officer mentioned. The you know, it's not an apartment complex, and that's intentional. We wanted to make these townhomes or row homes, and because you do see a different atmosphere usually, and that kind of, you have your own space. You go in, you don't have any corridors, common corridors, anything like that. So you do end up with a different working family as opposed to maybe a pure apartment complex. So, you know, we're excited to possibly build here. I think we're going to provide a great service to working families in the area. You know, we look forward to your support, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Does any one of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Snodgrass? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, sir. All right, this is the, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing if we have no other questions.
Commissioner McNair, so moved.
Second.
Commissioner Ford, second.
Okay, I have a motion to close the public hearing from Commissioner McNair and a second from Commissioner Ford. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes to close the public hearing 7-0. Now we'll start commissioner comment. Commissioner Deaton.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford.
I have a question on the bicycle parking. Is the bicycle parking just part of there being a proposed trail that's there, or is it because of a certain number of houses in this area with how close together the houses are? Or I know when Price Chopper, when all of that was going through, one of the big things with that was, you know, X amount of bicycle parking spaces because of the sidewalk and because of what the retail space was. I was just curious if that was because this is going to be multifamily, or because there might be a trail that's behind it, or how that works.
Yeah, it's both. It's because it's a multifamily use, which is 2 or more units within 1,000 feet of a designated bicycle route or trail.
Thank you, Kelly. Commissioner Ford, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. I have nothing further.
Commissioner Hanson?
No questions or comments here.
Commissioner McNair?
No comments or questions.
Commissioner Mader?
Yeah, just I know the developer was kind of breaking it out, and I just wanted to ask again, you know, that was the best plan and approach for our ADA community, was to bring in just 2 duplexes, 2 lots of duplexes. That was I guess the best way it fit with the plan, or it fit with the financials, or, I mean, was the due diligence done to make sure that the ADA community, you know, was truly looked at? I think this is what Gardner needs. They do need something that's going to put them in an affordable place to live, because I think there's a lot of outrageously priced housing options. And I like, it's not apartments. You're right. I get that. But I had a question on the duplexes first, and I've got one follow-up.
Mr. Snodgrass, if you would like to answer that.
Sure. So, yeah, we talked to the county, and we worked on whether to make this, it's always better if you're going to do mainly a senior ADA unit, that you try to keep them. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scoot over so you can hear me, but it's always better if you can try to make your ADA units and make it, and either do it all or nothing, you know. So we did discuss, because there's been a loss of affordable housing throughout the county, as evidenced by multiple Kansas Star and even the county themselves called me and said, hey, we need more affordable housing options out there. So I discussed with the county, well, do we want to do senior or do we want to do workforce? You know, for where we're located, workforce made the most sense. You know, we've built some in the past, or I've built some in the past where we had the ADA options with workforce, and they're not as utilized as you would expect. And I don't know if it's because the ADA community is not comfortable with the workforce part, and the more families, or exactly what it is, but it was, we knew we wanted to do at least some, but we also know that in my past experience doing these, especially where you do duplexes and townhomes, you know, it's greatly underutilized when it's in that setting. Now, going forward, if we see we can figure out land, we could certainly look at doing additional senior and or ADA. But for this particular site, and the proximity to the school and the proximity to where things were, there was intentional to go more workforce, but keep that ADA option in case somebody needs it.
Right. And I see there are two phases. So, you know, yeah, I guess you do have that flexibility, should that change. So I personally like this plan. I think it's good, and I think it's something that Gardner needs. So thank you for bringing this forward. My follow-on question is, and maybe this is probably towing outside of Planning Commission, but just to ask, these are obviously rentals. Is the management company then located here in the metro area, or is this something that's like farmed out to California?
No, I mean, I'm talking with different property management firms now. There's one here in Kansas City, because you're right, that's probably the most important aspect of any development is who's the property manager, how thorough are they in vetting the folks that live there, and what's their follow-up like. And so I'm talking to a couple of property management firms located here in Kansas City to make sure that we get the right fit. You know, we don't have a clubhouse on site, again, by design. So, because we really want to make these feel like your own house, even though it's not, you're renting it, right? And so whenever you put a clubhouse and a pool, it creates, again, more of the apartment feel to it. And we wanted this to be more of like, and we've had this before where, especially with aging in place seniors, they drive into their, and they tell us it's just like being at home, you know, when they used to own a house. And so, yeah, did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that did. Yeah, it was kind of, yeah, it was just a question, curiosity. So thank you. That answers the questions that I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simmons-Lee.
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, on to myself. To speak towards some of what Colin was talking about, first of all, this is a rezone. It's already zoned as RP2, which is duplexes. And as a planning commission, you know, we allow in what that zone allows. And so it's being changed to RP3, but the row homes that are going in don't take up, for the most part, any more space than the duplexes that already could have went in. So I don't see a big change when it comes to the zoning, which is what we're talking about right now. I don't really have any concerns going from RP2 to RP3. You gave out your stats, and I certainly appreciate all the work you did. You did a real good job with that. Some of those places are higher density than what this is, so that also has to be taken into account. We also have other row homes in Gardner. Now they're ones that you buy, not rent, but we do have other row homes. And again, we're looking at certain things, specifically land development code and zoning. They're looking for certain items, sort of like you brought up traffic stuff, but if the city study says that we're good with traffic, then we're good with traffic. That's not necessarily a purview of ours, as long as the city's traffic study comes back as being positive. So we do need a little bit more of this. I moved here years ago as a first responder due to the housing costs, and a lot of what's being built now in Gardner is actually mid-level homes and not starter homes. And this is kind of the way starter homes are nowadays. There is a lot more need for this type of property, and this one's situated in a spot where there's a little bit more buffer in between the areas around it. So that's what I have to say about the project. So is there any further commissioner discussion? Not seeing any. Oh, wait, Commissioner McNear.
Yeah, mute here. I just wanted to make a comment on something you mentioned, Commissioner Bowden. I think that I agree with you. This is really much needed housing, simply because the entry point, even in the more affordable parts of Gardner and single family for purchase, is now over $200,000. And even with young professionals, young school teachers, especially young police officers, especially, what's happening is that what we're seeing is a lot of these people, even though they get decent starting salaries, have upwards of 100,000 or more of student loan debt coming in to their first jobs, and that just prices $200,000 property opportunities right out the window for them. So this really is a very welcome addition to their community, in my opinion.
Okay, Kelly, will you bring up the discussion items that you had in there again, please? Did we lose Kelly?
Oops. Sorry, let me try that again.
The camel was fine.
Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. And you want to go back to the deviation requests?
Yeah, so that whoever makes a motion, make sure we get these in there right.
Okay, did you want to talk about a particular one, or do you want me to go to the motion?
You can go to motion. If any commissioners, if you have any questions about any of these things that need to be added on here, please ask. So the bicycle one, let's just start with that one. The general feeling from the commissioners, I personally don't see a need in this particular project for the bicycle parking. I was one of the ones that had a issue with the Price Chopper one, and honestly wanted to make that way less, but we did not have the ability as a commission to do that. With the garages on this, I personally would be fine with no bicycle parking. I can't see, maybe I can bring it back up. Casey?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I agree. I'm okay with what the developer wants here and not doing the bicycles with those longer driveways and the garages and things. I think that offers the storage that the people would need if they did choose to have bicycles.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comment on that deviation?
McNair, I'm in agreement too. And as I'm looking at this suggested motion in item 3, would we just delete anything after the comma on standards, the sections 17.09.030 required parking, or E bicycle parking? Would we leave that out, or would we just leave out E bicycle parking?
If you would like to let them, if you would like to grant them that deviation number 11, then you can just leave number 3 out entirely.
Okay,
Because
so
it's shown on their plan.
so we could, if we did the suggested motion, we didn't want to do the bicycle stuff, we could just do the conditions 1, 2, and 4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, did we have anything specific we needed to stay for number 4 then?
No, we'll just handle that with them. We'll just have them revise the plan to show that deviation number 12. It just wasn't on the plan.
Okay.
So if you agree they should have that front entry feature deviation for the duplex building type, we'll just have them add that onto the sheet.
Okay, so we would say 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, I would accept the motion.
McNair here suggests a motion after review of application Z-20-06, a rezoning of 14.02 acres located north of the intersection of Kill Creek Road in West 174th Street, parcel ID CF 221422-4007 from RP2 planned 2-family residential district to RP3 planned garden apartment district, and preliminary development plan PDP 20-02 for Prairie Brook Villas dated April 17th, 2020, and staff report dated April 28, 2020. The Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the application subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the stormwater plan and traffic study shall be approved prior to the approval of any final development plan / final plat. Item 2, because of the unique context and access configuration of this development, which limits the provision of contiguous green space in frontage area, the buffer edge frontage type will be implemented along Kill Creek Road and Pratt Street rather than on the cul-de-sacs to better meet code intent. Item 3, revise the deviation request on sheet 2 of the plan to reflect what has been approved, including the addition of deviation 12 regarding the front entry feature of the duplex building type.
Do you have a second?
Order second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNair and a second by Commissioner Ford. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Item 5B, PP-20-05.
Scott, could you read that again, please?
Item 5B, PP-20-05.
Thank you. Can everybody see the presentation? Fantastic. This will go kind of quick because somebody stole all my pictures for my plan and used it on theirs. So we'll get started right away. Unfortunately, I have the wrong number. It should be item 5B, I guess. Prairie Brook Villa subdivision preliminary plat, PP-20-05. Again, as you guys have all seen from the previous presentation, this is a subject property. Property includes 14 acres of land located on the north of 174th Street and along the east side of Kill Creek Road. The property has never gone through final platting and is undeveloped. The property was part of an annexation back in September 5th, 2000 per ordinance 1961. It was rezoned a year later from agricultural to PUD, planned urban development. Again, while this property went through the preliminary plat process, it never followed through with a final plat. The preliminary plat consists of 20 lots and 2 tracts on 14 acres. There are 2 points of access into the subdivision. I'll try to read through this quick because I know you guys have already heard it. One from an existing curb cut off of Kill Creek Road and another access off of the Pratt Street Road extension from the development to the south. Because this development was part of a larger planned development, most of the infrastructure was designed and constructed in the past. All utilities are located either within or adjacent to the site. As part of the meeting and comprehensive plan, this development promotes infill residential development within incomplete subdivisions, provides a range of housing options to meet the needs of all income levels. It meets the Land Development Code design guidelines with the approval of the deviations. It bridges development gaps between established growth areas and creates a balanced park system through the extension of the trail network. Staff findings on the preliminary plat. While the preliminary plat is not verbatim consistent with the comp plan, it does meet the intent of the plan with the larger lot layouts. The overall density is comparable to the adjacent development to the south. The proposed development does not meet the intent of the it does meet the intent of the comp plan by providing connectivity, open space, and neighborhood character. The stormwater management plan and the traffic impact study are currently under review. And as I mentioned earlier, all utilities, gas, water, electric, sewer are either adjacent or existing to the site. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat with the conditions outlined below. And I will let you guys discuss.
Okay, Commissioner discussion, Commissioner Deaton.
No comments or questions.
Commissioner Ford,
No questions.
Commissioner Hanson,
No questions here.
Commissioner McNear,
No questions.
Commissioner Mader,
No questions.
Commissioner Simmons Lee.
No questions.
I have no questions either. With no further questions, I accept the motion.
Commissioner Hanson here. After review of application PP-20-05, a preliminary plat for Prairie Brook Villas located north of West 174th Street along the east side of Kill Creek Road, tax ID CF221422-4007, and preliminary plat dated April 17th, 2020, and staff report dated April 28, 2020. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met. 1, approval of the final traffic impact study and stormwater management plan.
And
Second.
Who is that?
Mader, second.
Mader? Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson, a second by Commissioner Mader. Any further questions on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstention? Motion passes 7-0. All right, that was our last item, so I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ford. Who is the second?
McNear.
And a second by McNear to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Motion passes. We are adjourned.